investigation.
All right, Paul, there was one more story you mentioned we had not brought up.
A.D. Mitchell.
A.D. Mitchell from Georgia, very talented, dynamic playmaker. Graham Coffey's been kind of on this for the last 2 or 3 days, and this was almost imminent. And then there was a thought maybe it would not happen. A.D. Mitchell into the portal. This has been in the works since December. A big reason why Georgia got the 2 big insurance policies they did with Thomas and Lovett. The A.D. Mitchell story has been filled with so many twists and turns the last week, new era of college sports. And then I looked at some of the responses to his tweet, and there were thoughts about, was there any kind, I think he's visiting Texas. Paxton is a huge Texas fan, had that up in the chat room. I'd seen that before as well. And there were concerns about, well, when did the conversation begin with him or anybody that enters the transfer portal, and how soon and how much is going on with what Jeff Traylor mentioned, tampering?
Yeah, I mean, you can't kind of put some of these wild ones past any of that. I mean, Jordan Addison was one of the, I guess, the biggest one, where all of a sudden he's going to USC kind of out of the blue, or in the transfer portal out of the blue, and then everybody kind of said USC, but he took several visits to other places. But A.D. Mitchell caught the winning touchdown in the Ohio State game for Georgia, and
Duke can go.
Yeah, felt like he had been out most of this year with injuries, but came back to play in the postseason, and scored. I think everybody scored a touchdown in the national championship game. So if he didn't, I'm sorry, but it's hard to keep track. So it is weird that he is not coming back into what would be a pretty good receiving core with or without him. But with him, I mean, if you have A.D. Mitchell, Ra Thomas, and Dominic Lovett, I mean, that's a pretty good wide receiver core. And I'm not even mentioning some of and Ladd McConkey also. Ladd McConkey's coming back to Georgia as well. Throw in Brock Bowers. That's one heck of a amount of weapons for either Carson Beck or Brock Vandegrift, whoever wins that job. So maybe it is partially that, his touches were going to go down and he can go somewhere and pick it up. He is from Texas, so we'll see what happens if the University of is the place that he goes, or if it's somewhere else.
I think he's bound for Texas. I think that's where all the arrows are pointing. Let's just kind of get right to that. That's where all the arrows are pointing, and the way that it's talked about makes it sound like it has been in the works for a while. I mean, otherwise, why would it just all of a sudden he's entering the portal and there's all of this smoke? There's been smoke about Texas before he entered his name into the portal. So, like you said, he's a Texas guy, good player. I mean, we saw him, sparingly numbers-wise last year. But, yeah, I mean, all you have to do is look. He had a 22-yard touchdown against TCU, had a 22-yard touchdown, 3 catches, 43 yards against Ohio State. And those were the bulk of his numbers last year. Had a catch against Samford earlier in the year, and in the opener against Oregon had 4 for 65 and a score. So, had numbers in 3 of the 4 games that he had stats. Had a touchdown against TCU, Ohio State, and Oregon. Top 3, 4, and 11 teams in the country when he played them. So didn't see a lot of them for injuries or what have you. But when we did see him, he was, making a splash, especially there towards the end of the year. So good pickup for Texas. Sounds like, again, it has been in the works for a while, or this is almost a foregone conclusion. So I suppose if he commits elsewhere, then that would be like a big stunner. But, yeah, fully expect him to end up with the Longhorns. And you can talk about who Georgia has or whatever, McConkey and all that. How about Isaiah Nayor, Xavier Worthy, and A.D. Mitchell? Yeah. I mean, that's where their brains are. And then you add in, obviously, the big talented, tight end and Jatavian Sanders. And then, committee replacing Bijan and Quinn Ewers and the offensive line. And they're expecting a big run in Austin next year. There's no doubt about it. I think that, probably going to be the last year. They would love nothing more than to go out Big 12 champs and, put a period on the end of that sentence and it be, them with the bragging rights at the very end. And they're surely shaping up to be a team that's going to be right there at the top of the league in terms of prediction and contention, because why else wouldn't they be? I mean, look at the roster. They really have no excuse not to be, especially when schools like TCU and K-State are losing as much as they're losing. I mean, Texas should almost be the clear favorite, I think, in so many ways. So, yeah, this would be a very good pickup for them, and I expect it will be a pickup for them sooner rather than later.
He played for Ridge Point High School down in the Houston-Fort Bend area. Then he transferred to a school in Tennessee. So there is some connections to the state of Texas. All right, when we come back,